Juliana liked playing mahjong very much. She usually played with Simon and the others. Her elder brothers all spoiled her like a little princess, coaxed her and let her win, so she was naturally happy. But Alfred William was not among this group of good brothers. He not only didn't let her touch the tiles, but also deliberately made her lose every round. Juliana quickly lost all the chips on Simon's table, and her eyebrows knitted together in distress. She felt that Alfred William was deliberately picking on her. It was not the first time that he had bullied the weak one of her. Adam Thomas couldn't bear it and said, "Please target on me, okay? If you make sister cry, be careful that Simon will come back to get even with you." Alfred William glanced over from across the table and looked at Juliana's eyes with great interest and said, "Is she crying? If she is, I'll stop." Adam Thomas said, "You're such a nuisance." Juliana had every reason to believe that even if she really cried, Alfred William wouldn't stop. The first time she met Alfred William, she was only 17 years old. At that time, all her meager knowledge about him came from various rumors outside. He was arrogant and overbearing, did outrageous things, bullied the weak with his power, and had almost killed someone, and so on. In short, he was not a good person. Juliana remembered her first impression of Alfred William, cold and dangerous. When Alfred William came to the Thompson family, she would keep as far away as possible after saying hello each time. On very rare occasions, when Simon had something to leave and she had to take on the task of entertaining the guests, she had to stay alone with Alfred William. At that time, she had just begun to learn international chess, so she took it out and invited Alfred William to play together. She had learned international chess under Simon's personal instruction and thought she had learned quite well. Simon always let her win and allowed her to take back her moves, but Alfred William was different. He had shown no mercy and had been ruthless in victory. Juliana wasn't afraid of losing, but she didn't like being abused. She hadn't wanted to play anymore and had wanted to put away the chessboard. Alfred William's long, narrow, and piercing eyes had lazily glanced over and taunted her, "Running away after losing, aren't you ashamed?" As a result, she had been haunted by international chess for a while. Simon came back after answering the phone, swept a glance at the table. He raised an eyebrow and said, "How could you guys bully my little nine?" Juliana immediately made seat for him. She was unhappy about being targeted by Alfred William, but at that time she had to endure it since she needed his help, and she even found an excuse for Alfred William. "I'm not very good at playing this," she said. Simon smiled and gently patted the back of her head twice, as he used to do. He then threw his phone to Juliana and sat down again. "Watch carefully." Simon could be evenly matched with Alfred William. The two were of equal strength and fought back and forth. At least, he won back some of the chips that Juliana had lost. Juliana watched the game on the side. Before, she didn't study these skills. When playing tiles, she simply relied on her extremely good luck. Only at this time did she find that there were actually a lot of tricks in it. One needed to calculate the tiles. Besides knowing one's own tiles well, one also needed to be well informed about others' tiles and plan ahead with far-seeing vision. She moved to the opposite side without others' notice when the battle was intense. She took a look at Alfred Williams' tiles, but couldn't understand them, because this man didn't arrange his tiles at all. He just left them as he picked them up, with the flower tiles sandwiched between the 4 and 9 dots tiles, and 1 bamboo and 2 bamboos tiles were as far apart as a galaxy. The messy arrangement itself had an anti-peeping effect. Juliana was trying to figure out in her mind how on earth he could win with these tiles when Alfred William suddenly turned his head without warning and said, "Got it, little patriot?" The people whose attention had been on the tile game immediately turned to look at Juliana. She felt as if she had been caught stealing on the spot and publicly punished. "I didn't." She wanted to explain that she was not peeping but just curious about his playing style. Alfred William shook his chair and said in a tone as if he was dismissing a child, "I need 8 bamboos. Go quickly and report to your brother." It was always the civilians who suffered when Clash of the Titans. Adam Thomas lost so much that he almost had nothing left. He suddenly slapped his thigh as if he had a great realization and said, "I wondered why Simon always won." So there was a little patriot helping him. Juliana found it hard to defend herself. Simon just laughed. He tapped the half-smoked cigarette on the crystal ashtray and didn't even try to defend himself. He seemingly accepted the charge of sending out a spy. All's fair in war. Nothing's too deceitful in war, he said as he played and ate bamboos. Sure enough, Alfred William was waiting for the 8 bamboos. He pushed down his tiles and shook his chair, saying, "I won." She took a look at Alfred William's tiles, but couldn't understand them, because this man didn't arrange his tiles at all. He just left them as he picked them up, with the flower tiles sandwiched between the 4 and 9 dots tiles, and 1 bamboo and 2 bamboos tiles were as far apart as a galaxy. The messy arrangement itself had an anti-peeping effect. Juliana was trying to figure out in her mind how on earth he could win with these tiles when Alfred William suddenly turned his head without warning and said, "Got it, little patriot?" The people whose attention had been on the tile game immediately turned to look at Juliana. She felt as if she had been caught stealing on the spot and publicly punished. "I didn't." She wanted to explain that she was not peeping but just curious about his playing style. Alfred William shook his chair and said in a tone as if he was dismissing a child, "I need 8 bamboos. Go quickly and report to your brother." It was always the civilians who suffered when Clash of the Titans. Adam Thomas lost so much that he almost had nothing left. He suddenly slapped his thigh as if he had a great realization and said, "I wondered why Simon always won." So there was a little patriot helping him. Juliana found it hard to defend herself. Simon just laughed. He tapped the half-smoked cigarette on the crystal ashtray and didn't even try to defend himself. He seemingly accepted the charge of sending out a spy. "All's fair in war. Nothing's too deceitful in war," he said as he played and ate bamboos. Sure enough, Alfred William was waiting for the 8 bamboos. He pushed down his tiles and shook his chair, saying, "I won." Juliana really wanted to kick the legs of his chair. She quietly sat back to original position and didn't go near Alfred William anymore. At midnight, candles were inserted into the cake, and the cake was pushed in front of Simon. Everyone formed a circle and sang the happy birthday song together. He was surrounded in the middle. Juliana was pushed by someone and ended up standing at the back. Before she was 18, this would never have happened. Everyone around Simon knew how much he doted on her, but she had to get used to it sooner or later. She couldn't stand beside him forever. Juliana was slowly learning to accept this fact. She was following the rhythm when Simon's gaze passed through the others and landed on her. The orange candlelight made his outline bright and dim alternately. He reached out to her and said, "Little 9, come here." Everyone in the circle turned around to look at her. Those standing in the front quickly moved aside to make way. Juliana walked over. Simon put his palm on her left shoulder and brought her in front of him, right in front of the flickering candles on the cake. "Make a wish," he said. Juliana used to do this often. She always had so many wishes in her mind, not only on her own birthday, but also every time Simon had his birthday, she was the one to make wishes. Simon would help her fulfill it whenever and whatever she made a wish. Juliana could feel the gazes falling on her with all kinds of meanings. But the girl who liked making wishes had grown up. She already knew that not all wishes could come true. "I have no wishes now," Juliana said. "Brother, it's your birthday. You make a wish yourself." Simon's eyes were made deep by the flickering candlelight. When she looked again, there was only the tenderness as before in his eyes. He stroked her hair and said, "Then save it. Make a wish when you have one." In the second half of the birthday party, the air was filled with alcohol. Juliana hadn't had a good rest in the past few days since she came back. She couldn't hold on and slept on the couch for a while. When she woke up, there was a blanket covering her. The maid was standing beside her. When she saw Juliana wake up, she said, "The young master said that if you are sleepy, you can go to the room upstairs to sleep." Juliana looked in the direction of the chatting and laughing voices and saw Simon and Adam Thomas, and the others were still drinking. These young masters were a few drunk that beautiful and charming women were snuggling up to them. Today was Simon's birthday, so he couldn't avoid being made to drink a lot by those people together. He crossed his long legs and relaxed on the couch. 2 buttons of his white shirt were unbuttoned. His right hand with a cigarette in it was resting on the armrest of the couch. The cigarette was burning on its own. It didn't seem to know whether he was drunk or absent-minded. The woman sitting beside Simon was extremely beautiful and looked familiar to Juliana. She seemed to be a female star, but Juliana couldn't remember who she was at that moment. Juliana seemed not fully awake and stared blankly in Simon's direction. She heard Adam Thomas, who was already drunk, joked, "She flew here late at night to celebrate your birthday, and you didn't show any appreciation." Simon said, "Are you jealous?" Adam Thomas said, "If I am, will you give her to me?" "No way," the female star said with a very sweet smile as she naturally rested her chin on Simon's shoulder. In the past, this was her privilege. She had been very clingy to Simon since she was a child. When Simon went out to play with Adam Thomas and others, she insisted on going with them, and Simon took her along every time. Because of her presence, their play was very plain. At that time, there were no such women around Simon, and when she was sleepy, she would lie on him and fall asleep. Juliana's gaze retracted and dropped to the ground, and her fingers, which were supported on the edge of the sofa, were slender and became pale. After a while, she raised her head again as if nothing had happened and asked the maid, "Where is Brother Alfred?" "I haven't seen Mr. William. He should have left." Juliana stood up immediately and walked hurriedly in the direction of the parking lot. The maid held a blanket and asked her from behind, "Are you leaving? Aren't you going to say goodbye to the young master?" Juliana shook her head. "I won't disturb him."